Hi, everyone. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about identification. Now, this is a politically charged area, and I really don't want to get into the politics of this because I'm bound to piss just about everybody off, whether they're on the left or the right of the political spectrum. But I have a phrase on my website that says something like, the root of all suffering is identification with the me and the story of me. And it goes back to the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. One being life is dukkha. Dukkha was translated as suffering or stress. That's the first noble truth, that we experience as human beings. Discomfort, dis-ease in our lives. The second noble truth, and I forget the Sanskrit words for the rest of these, the second noble truth is that the reason for the suffering is that we are deluded. Well, it doesn't mean that we are mentally ill in that sense of delusion, but more we're deluded in the sense that we identify with our ideas, our belief systems, and in particular, our me. And the third noble truth of Buddhism is that there's a cure for that. And the fourth noble truth sets out the cure. Now, this isn't to talk about the Four Noble Truths because I've talked about those already anyway. But I want to talk about suffering, because identification, because identification as the root of suffering is a key aspect of Buddhist and non-dual teaching. Our ego, our sense of self, the thing that we think of as a me, is the most critical point of identification that we have. We believe that there is a me here, me being a person, a unique identity as a particular individual. Now, that requires separation from the rest of the world. Because if there's a me here, that means there's a you over there. Some non-dual teachers, as well as Zen teachers, request that you internally investigate the source of this me, or the source of the I am, which is considered to be the first thought. But the I am actually precedes the thought of me. It's the idea that there's a me here. Now, where we get ourselves in trouble is this me comes with a story. And it starts from a very young age. As soon as we get our name, the story begins. And then we're exposed to our family, our parents, and they start telling us what's appropriate for the me, what the me should do or could do or ought to do or is supposed to do or not supposed to do. Don't do that. Don't do that. No. Yes, that's good. Good boy. And we start developing this story around the me, and this story eventually evolves into our various roles as we play as we get older. First, maybe as a child, as a son or a daughter, as a peer when we start hanging out with our friends, as a cousin or a brother or a sister or a nephew or a niece. And later on, maybe as we go through the dating phase in high school as a boyfriend or girlfriend. Later on, we might get married and now we're a husband or a wife. We start taking jobs and we start identifying with our professions and the roles that we play. And these become internalized because we think that that's who we are. And this is where suffering starts, because we identify with these roles that we play. That's me. Who are you? What do you do? That's me. Even more insidious is when we start identifying with our belief systems. Now, beliefs, I heard a wonderful phrase many years ago, beliefs are just thoughts that you keep thinking. That's all a belief is a repetitive thought. And when we start identifying with these particular belief systems, we really get ourselves in trouble because, again, the premise is there's a me with a particular belief system, and there's a you with a perhaps slightly different belief system, and that sets up a conflict. And it's uncomfortable, and it leads to suffering. Suffering not only for you, because of the dichotomy that's been created, but suffering for other people, especially if there's conflict as a result of the fact that you believe your thought is correct and they believe their thought is correct. It's a path that leads to suffering. Now, in recent years, there's been these culture wars going on that are derived from identification. We hear the phrase identity politics. The mistake that's happening, it's happening on both sides here. The mere fact that we identify as something is the problem. What we are is greater than what we think we are. What we are is greater than what we think we are. What we think we are those thoughts in which we identify as something. Now, I'm not going to disregard the practical aspect of identification. For example, the Equal Opportunity Act, EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity, I forget what it's, I forget. We have to fill out the boxes. Are you male? Are you female? What's your race? What's your age? I mean, there's a bunch of demographic variables here. And in some cases, this is where, you know, we want to start creating more nuanced categories based upon how we feel or based upon what we think about ourselves. Now, I'm not saying you disregard those forms. You know, they're perhaps a necessary evil in the society. And again, I don't want to get into the politics of this. I want to get into the spiritual aspect of this, which is identifying as something puts a limit, puts boundaries around what it is you really are. Now, I'm not going to say that I know what it is that you are, or I know what it is that I am. Words have been used. We're pure consciousness, we're awareness, we're awakeness, we're true nature, it's emptiness, it's the absolute, it's open, spacious awareness. These are all words, they're phrases that point to what we really are. But if you really look, you realize that what we are has no edges. It has no boundaries. What we really are, one phrase that I like is we are the nothingness that is everything. That goes back to this Buddhist phrase in the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form being the phenomenal universe. Emptiness refers to that open, spacious, boundless centerless sense of awareness. But what that is beyond any recognition by the mind. The mind is contained within the whole thing. We also identify with our minds. That's insidious. We all do. We think that our thoughts are us. Well, they're not. If you could observe a thought, then you are not the thought, are you? Technically speaking, because you are boundless and limitless, what you are contains thought. But we make the mistake of identifying as the thought. So even a simple phrase, I am hungry, we're letting the thought speak for what we really are. Now, this thing that we call a body, that we appear to inhabit, sends signals to the brain, and I'm talking from a relative perspective because here we are. This is an apparent body, a human being, and I could differentiate this from objects in my room or from other creatures or from other people. So this body might be hungry, but another body over there might not be hungry. But when this body is hungry, we tend to say something like, I am hungry, as if the thought, the feeling of hunger is owned by this I. And when we think that thought, I am hungry, we are solidifying our identification that there's a me here that's hungry. Doesn't mean that the feeling of hunger doesn't arise. It does. It's a biological thing, as long as we accept that here we are in these things, these spacesuits, these human spacesuits that we wear. So when we get into further labeling ourselves as something, we are limiting our own potential. And too many people are holding on to the idea that they are something. And this works both ways, because if you say, I identify as something, we know that there's the opposite side of there politically, that they don't want you to do that. And that creates suffering too. All the prejudice and discrimination and hatred and anger that is experienced in this world is painful to observe, because it all comes down to the fact that one person identifies as something and another person perhaps doesn't believe that you should identify as that thing. Again, there are some practical examples. I don't want to get into those, but I know I'm going to get comments about this. If you have a penis, then use the bathroom that says it's for men. And if you have a vagina, use the bathroom that says it's for women. It doesn't matter what you think about yourselves. Now, yes, there is still identification here, because whether you're a boy or a man or a girl or a woman is a biological thing. And maybe there's some areas where some of that biology is not as clear cut as we tend to think it is. But when we have a thought that, well, I'm not that I feel more like this, that's when we start to suffer. And it works both ways. You have a cultural context that is providing a milieu over your thought processes, and your thought processes are either in accord or not with that cultural milieu. My point is, when you hold on to an idea, when you hold on to an idea of identifying as something, that is why suffering exists. I actually thought I'd have more to say about this, and maybe I will. But in any case, so let me leave you with this. The best way through suffering is to pay attention to what those thoughts of identification are. What are those thoughts? I mean, I could also make a little bit of a joke here. You know, my career was as a college professor in business psychology, but I could say, hey, I identify as a neurosurgeon. Well, that's silly, isn't it? Or, looks like I'm a human being here, but I identify as a squirrel. It's silly, isn't it? It doesn't make any sense. And even though it doesn't appear to be as silly to say, I'm a man, but I identify as a woman, or I'm a woman and I identify as a man, or I want to identify as a man or a woman, why do you need to do that at all? Just be the energy patterns that you already are. Express what feels appropriate without labels. You don't have to identify yourself. Now, you also have to do so within the context of the milieu. If you're like I said, if you're filling out a box of what they call gender these days, which is really just biological sex, yeah, recognizing that that is not always as clean biologically as most of us tend to think it is, right? We have to do that. But don't let your thought about yourself override maybe some underlying apparent reality. And again, I know I'm going to get in trouble with this in these comments, but I mean, yeah, here's a coffee mug. It's a thermal coffee mug. I can call it anything I want. But if I call it a spoon, well, that doesn't make any sense, does it? I mean, practically speaking, it's still a coffee cup, or whatever name in any language you wish to call it. But I do differentiate it between, say, a spoon, you know? So if I say, hey, I'm going to pour myself some coffee, I'm not going to pour it into the spoon. I'm going to pour it into this. It's got a lid. I could open it up, keeps it nice and warm, and I can drink it. Call it what you want. It doesn't change its apparent reality. Now, again, at a quantum physics level, there's nothing there. I mean, but from this perspective of consciousness, there's an object that can hold coffee, something we call coffee. And I could drink from this object. Doesn't matter what I call it. And so there's no fighting about it. There's no arguing. No, it's a spoon. No, it's a mug. It doesn't matter. What matters? Just that. So if you want to, if you are really interested in alleviating your own suffering, take a good hard look at the ideas and thoughts and beliefs that you hold on to. I'll say that again. If you really are interested in alleviating suffering, not just for yourself, but for the whole world, take a look at the thoughts, ideas, and belief systems you hold on to. There's a side note to this too, something that's run through my mind for many years now. You know, there's too many people out there who take offense to something. And this goes along with identification. I take offense. Well, what does it mean to take offense? The only reason you would take offense, and again, dualistic language, and I refer to I, and you don't be the non-dual police and tell me I'm not supposed to use pronouns in this fashion, I, you. It's the way we communicate. When someone takes offense to something, they're taking offense because they're holding onto a belief system too tightly. That your thought is correct, or that thought is correct, that thought is right. I take offense. If you really freed yourself from your thoughts, from your identifications, you wouldn't take offense about anything. What's to be offended about? The whole world is unfolding just as it is. Some things are beneficial, some things are not. This country right now and all around the world, we're going through a massive heat wave, breaking records, temperature records. I don't like the idea that human beings are essentially destroying ourselves. We are pieces of the planet. We're not separate from this planet. We are this planet. We just happen to be self-aware and mobile. And now we're destroying the planet. Toxic waste, plastic in the oceans, fossil fuels. And sure, as a human being, I see that, and it's disturbing. On the one hand, that's the relative side of things. Things count. Everything counts. But ultimately, nothing really matters. Do what you can. Do what you can to improve your life and the life of others, because your life and the life of others are the same. You wouldn't think to chop off a finger because you don't like the finger. The finger belongs part of the whole. And that's how we are with the rest of this universe. We are, in our little forms here, part of something that is infinite and boundless. That's what we are. So stop. Look at your thoughts. What are you thinking? Where is the suffering arising? Is it arising because you're holding on to an idea about yourself or about others? About how you think things should be or could be? Or how things in the past should have been, which is really silly. Things are different in the past. To apply your standards of today to the past, the whole cancel culture on both sides here, I'm speaking to both sides here politically. The whole thing is silly. The whole thing is silly. We spend so much time arguing and fighting. As the saying goes, cutting off your nose to spite your face. And so That's what we're doing as human beings in this particular form, at this particular time, on this particular planet, in this particular universe. It's crazy. It's crazy. So wake up, restore your sanity, drop your ideas, see that your ideas are nothing but thoughts. Drop your beliefs, see that your beliefs are nothing but thoughts. Drop your identifications with everything, see that they're nothing but thoughts. Stop trying to impose your thoughts on other thoughts. I don't care where you stand on the political spectrum. Stop believing your thoughts are better than other people's thoughts. Practically speaking, yes, we might say that my belief that we are heating up this planet with fossil fuels is a belief. You might not believe otherwise, but here, then I would revert to the scientist in me, which is you got to look at the evidence of what's going on. Even though it's all part of the holographic illusion that we seem to be experiencing, we cannot deny that this is what's being experienced. You know, I never know what I'm going to say when I start these things. I have an idea about something, I have an opinion about something. I'm offering it to you, but I'm offering it to you from my heart because this is why people are suffering right now on this planet, everywhere. And we ourselves are the cause of suffering because we believe that there's a me here and that my ideas, beliefs, and opinions are more important than yours. And that somehow my thoughts and feelings are more important than yours. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Thank you for listening.